Hi, my name is John, and you're watching American Enlightenment. Hi, Trish.
Hi, John. Good to see you.
Well, we talk every Sunday at 2 o'clock.
Yes.
So for all the viewers out there and listeners, this is my business accountability coach.
I love it. I enjoy what I do so much. And it's so great to actually be able to meet with you in person, not just over the phone every week.
It is totally a thrill. Can you tell me a little bit about the difference between a business coach and an accountability coach?
Absolutely. And we were just talking about this before we went on. So it's a common question, as is the difference between a therapist and an accountability, or a coach. So business coach, accountability coach, they're kind of one and the same. A lot of coaches in the world, it's kind of become I hate to say a cliche, but you've got your fitness coach, your business coach, your accountability coach. The way I see it is at least with Upways.co, the company that I work with, it's accountability is holding your clients accountable. It's holding all of us accountable. We're all humans with different issues that we face every day. And as a coach, we listen. And from meeting with me every week, how was your week? Is it a good week, a tough week? And then what are one or two action items that you, the client, would like to address this week? So the client is always in charge. And then business just distinguishes that we tend to focus more on your business. I definitely have clients where one week it's more about their personal life. I mean, we're all human. And so our personal lives will, ebb and flow through our business concerns. So they kind of go together, business and accountability. We also say breakthrough coaching, by the way. So that the work that we do can help clients break through challenges. So that's another common term these days.
And so what kind of challenges have you seen breakthroughs? I mean, that's a new one for me. Okay, so now, I want to know more.
Sure.
Okay, so breakthrough challenges. So where have you seen breakthrough challenges where entrepreneurs or CEOs, and we're going to talk a little bit about your client base and the types of individuals you deal with, but breakthroughs in just getting past mental blocks, or breakthroughs in business, or breakthroughs in just what types of things?
That's a great question too. In fact, there's days, I have my own coach, my business coach too. And so there's days when I'm working with clients, great question that you have here, because I'll have an aha moment. And it's kind of an aha moment. And I can either be in a session with a client. We have what we call check-ins that are just 20 minutes, or what you and I do together, which is more of that breakthrough and accountability. And as a coach, at least I'm trained to listen for those highs and lows and really kind of, let's pause for a minute, John. Tell me more about what happened this week. You mentioned this was great news. Why was that? Or many times I'll hear a client say something and a few cue words. I'm just trying to think of what those might be. That'll catch my attention, and we'll dive into that. And that would be an example of a breakthrough. So relationships, business, you manage several businesses. So one week we might talk about just one of your businesses, and just helping that client by asking the right questions as a coach. So there's the accountability of what would you like to do coming into the next week to set some goals. And then the breakthrough part of it happens on a greater scale, if that makes sense. It's more step by step. But I believe that our job as coaches is to kind of listen for those moments. A client this last year has quit smoking entirely, which is amazing. I love that I supported that, but that was their breakthrough. They decided that they were through the stresses that had led them to start smoking. They're young, and they said, I'm ready to quit. And I went, wow, I'm definitely not an expert in that area. But the great thing about coaching is you can say, what will be those first steps you'll take? And now a year later, he doesn't smoke. So to me, that's a breakthrough. Relationships, you and I will probably talk some about that, because I had mentioned that in my own life, I've certainly had a lot of personal experience and different dynamics. I have my own therapist for different situations in life. And when you have a success with a relationship that might have previously been really challenging, family members, partners, exes, uh, just friends. And then suddenly you have maybe some people call it a come to Jesus meeting, but you come out of that encounter going, that was really successful. I literally just spent the holidays with my mom, and we both commented. We've had some rough, moments in our lives, not uncommon for a mother-daughter. And we both said, wasn't this a great holiday? So it was pretty exciting. And I would consider that a breakthrough. So those are the things as coaches that we can really look for and say, hey, John, tell me more about that. Maybe where you wouldn't see it coming, but we might see it coming. And then you have to be ready. And John, you are always open. You always show up. And I want to thank you for that. You really do.
Do you have a problem with, we're going to delve into a little bit more, but sometimes people that you're dealing with don't show up, or they kind of flake out?
Yes. In fact, because I'm human, like you and everyone else, those frustrate me the most. And then I have to stop and think, what do I do for a living? I'm an accountability coach. So there are definitely, I forget things. I don't show up. I am far from perfect. That's why I get it. I really get it. And maybe an hour after somebody was supposed to show up. This is a great question, by the way, because what we do for a living, we often forget it's not always going to be fun. And so when people don't show up, when people are late, when they just no show, I have to remind myself, okay, have a little grace. This is what you do for a living. But hold them accountable. So next time, tell them, let's try to be on time. Should we pick a better time? Is there a better day that might work? But you really are good at showing up. I don't want any brownie points for that. So yeah, that is something that can happen.
So your client base, okay, and first I want to ask, how many years have you been doing this?
It's been about 15 years. I came out of sales and then went into coaching.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So 15 years, your client base, CEOs, entrepreneurs, doctors.
It's a mix, which is really surprising and intimidating. I learned through Mitch Matthews' Coach Mindset program, and some of the best wisdom I gained from that program, became certified, professional coach, is meet people where they are. And coaching skills can apply to almost any situation if you learn your skills in your, realm or your niche, and you can work with anyone. And it is intimidating because I do have a broad range of clients, but what I love about it is it's so much fun. And I do my work in between. I feel challenged. I've got a young man who retired, did a buyout from a wealthy company, and now he's really shifted. Talk about a breakthrough. He is now looking at his health, his fitness, his relationships. He's really shifted his mind from his career to the rest of his life. That's a great coaching relationship, and I love to be a part of that. I have another client who lives 3 different places in the world during the year. So sometimes I'm talking to him from Africa. Another, I'm talking to him in Seattle. So the time zones change too. I love that. I love, and I learn so much because I think I've got someone from Australia, definitely Africa, Philadelphia, Washington State, where we have a lot of rain today, and I love it. I love it. But yeah, the diversity of it. But the skills can apply to anyone. We all want love. We all feel lonely. We all have something, unless we're independently wealthy, like a few of my clients are. We're all focused on some kind of a vocation or career. I sure am. I plan to work as long as I can. So it is a diverse group that I work with.
So the age ranges of the folks you deal with, it's a diverse crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Men, women, and age ranges diverse. Do you notice any commonality of stress factors? The more people dump on themselves, the more that they feel like they're, how can I put this? And this is coming from me personally too.
Mm-hmm.
They're disappointed in themselves. Like, I wanted to achieve something, but I don't know why it's not happening. I mean, for myself, I'm working on we're gonna be doing some movie scripts,
Yes.
and but I got set back about a month and a half, and it's been gnawing at me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had something lined up where somebody was going to come help me, get the characters, everything put together. And that was my daughter. She got in a car wreck.
Right. Right.
So it kind of
It throws everything off.
it does. But
Yeah.
when you're that driven and you're that monofocused, it's just like I don't know how to describe it. You just keep going no matter what.
Yep.
But at the same point in time, a lot of the folks you're dealing with, they feel disappointed in themselves. So how do you get them past the disappointment
Mm-hmm.
of not achieving a hurdle or a goal and talk them through to get a logical stance to get to the next level?
I wish I could literally do an interview all the time because it's helping me really think about what I do. I love this. Thank you. This is great.
The whole purpose of American Enlightenment is to delve in,
Yeah.
in an intellectual
And learn.
perspective and peel back the layers.
I love it. I love it. Well, so in a nutshell, the two things I can say, number one, how do we get past it? Oh, if I could, therapy and coaching. This is a big question many people ask. What's the difference? And many coaches who I consider mentors consider therapy to be looking in the past, really examining your history, your childhood, your what components of your upbringing have brought you to where you are today, to you, John, to your drivenness, as you say. And you and I have shared enough with each other that I think I have some good ideas of where you get your drivenness, your family history, which is positive. And then number two, the growth mindset. I want to mention the growth mindset because at Upways Coaching, we really follow Carol Dweck's philosophy of the coach mindset. And she coined the term. She's a psychologist. She's kind of the mother of growth mindset. 2006, she wrote a book about growth mindset. And essentially, she keeps it simple that there's a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. You and your staff, whom I've met, great people, myself, we have growth mindset. We don't look at situations and say, oh, wow, my daughter got in an accident. You go right to, where is she? Is she okay? I know you, and you did that. Then next is, okay, now that I know she's okay, how do I pick up the pieces? Because I was trying to stay on course with my work. People with a growth mindset take those challenges, and this is what I love to do because I apply it to myself, and I'm seeing that I'm growing. So it's pretty exciting. And like you doing your fitness work with Pinnacle right now, you're a living example of your success. But to answer your question, basically, how does a person, that was your question, right? How does a person get unstuck and keep moving forward when they feel like they're not getting ahead? Growth mindset says, I am getting ahead. It's a lot of self-affirmation. It's a lot of belief, and it's proof from our history. You've seen what you've done in the past. That's a really common question that we ask as coaches. My coach asks that of me. Hey, Trish, you're having a bad day. You're crying on Zoom with me. And, tell me a time you've had success in the past. So we redirect your mind and we remind you who you are. We remind you where you've been, and you are successful. And most of my clients are. It's when they let themselves down. I started to say me, but no, when they let themselves down and don't show up for a meeting, and they'll say, I'm so sorry. And I'll say, well, you're letting yourself down, show up. So that's why I admire clients who show up, like you.
But do you find that when you start getting that pattern of behavior, the human mind can only take so much stress?
Yes.
And then it starts to shut down, and it tells the body no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where procrastination, in my opinion, comes into play a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and I learned the hard way to take things in stride.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I'm still learning.
So, but do you find that there's something behind, there were some stress factors, their behavior flipped because maybe they had some problems at home, or maybe there was more pressures mounting within the work environment or the professional environment, and next thing you know, their body goes on tilt and the machine shuts down?
Wow, that's a great question. So coaching and therapy, I'm not a therapist, I am a coach. By the way, before I forget, it's in my humble opinion, in the years I've been coaching, it's a kind of a triage. It's a village. I tell my therapist, who's also a life coach, that she's the mayor of my village. So I think it takes a village to support us. Depending on how severe the overwhelm is, overwhelm's a big part of what I have conversations with. And I do tap into my own history, my own work with my therapist, and then coaching experience. But when the brain shuts down, and in fact, Carol Dweck, you and I were talking earlier about neuroplasticity. She's a psychologist. She's very well known. I think she's in her early 80s now. Carol Dweck, who coined the growth mindset. Fixed mindset says our brains don't have the capacity to grow when we're adults. The growth mindset, and science has shown we absolutely do. Our brains, I mean, you know the studies that are happening and showing all of our progress. This is why I love to talk to you about these things. But there are steps you can take, and those are things I can do. Those are things that coaches can be skilled to do, John, which are boundary setting. In a typical session with you or one of my other clients, I listen for cues about what's happening in their life. We call it the life pie. What slice of their life is this happening in? Is it personal? Is it business? Is it health? And then I start to ask questions. So why don't we do, I'll give you an example. We'll do a hypothetical since our sessions are confidential. But a hypothetical would be actually what you just shared. It isn't even hypothetical. It's overwhelming to have things happen. Holidays are overwhelming. Setting boundaries requires training, requires practice. We have to tell ourselves, okay, we're going to do something we're not used to, like getting on a bicycle. The old way is I'm just going to keep going and going and going. The improved Trish, improved John, improved other clients is, you know what? Let's stop a minute here. Kind of a safe word when you're in relationships, right? And there's an argument that happens. So we give ourselves a safe word is often what I'll say. And I'll do that for myself. Wow, I'm feeling overwhelmed today. I'm going to need to say no to something. And pushing back to others is one of the hardest things to do in life. It just happened to me this holiday. It happened to a lot of people this holiday. Everyone has such high expectations for the holidays. So I kind of prepped myself. Okay, how am I going to set boundaries and kind of take care of Trish this holiday and still have fun? And so I don't know if that answers your question, but when there's overwhelm, when we fall off track, and when we tend to be people who do too much, how can we get back on to the rhythm? And that comes with giving ourselves grace, thinking about what's really possible in a day, sitting down and taking stock of our reality, and being good to ourselves. I got to tell you, sometimes I just feel like I'm a mental massage therapist. When the clients,
I actually like that metaphor.
when the clients show up, it's like, I would never say I was because I have a relative who is, and she would find issue with that. But honestly, people show up and you realize, I thought, wow, I really am listening. We don't get enough people listening to us in our lives. And my family is sick of listening to me. Your family might be too. So it can be a really good profession if you have skills to offer. And I love everyone I work with, maybe except the people who don't show up well. I love them, but I'm annoyed. But I really love working with everyone I do because it just reminds me how human we are. It's like they're just like me, and I can share something to help them.
Is there a common theme for the type of clients that you interact with?
The theme. Gotcha. So we talked about some common situations they come with. I have to say that since the pandemic, relationships. I mean, I'm a business coach, accountability, breakthroughs. I've literally started promoting more of the breakthrough and accountability because since 2020, it's been mostly about coping in relationships. Communication, how do we communicate? Even at work, communicating better at work because people aren't in person as much. They're working remotely. So conflict is arising more often remotely. It's really interesting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the clients you have, percentage-wise, how many are entrepreneurs? How many are CEOs in fixed corporations or CFOs or that type of thing, CEOs or what have you? Or other
Demographics.
professions. Yeah, exactly. But how many are entrepreneurs? I mean, out of the folks who deal with this, a larger percentage.
Wow. Interestingly, I think it's interesting. I'm a female coach, and many of my counterparts work with a lot of women. I have more male clients, and every one of them but one is a professional, executive, corporation, wearing more than one hat like yourself, have kids, a wife, the whole 9 yards. And so may I quickly say too, John, that when you mentioned earlier that someone like you can find it really hard and others can find it hard for a workaholic, if we were in a session right now, I would say, hey, let's reframe that. You're an entrepreneur working very hard to support the ones you love, and you're doing something that you love. So I don't know that I'd say you're a workaholic if you're going to say it negatively, because there is a person out there who is many people who are your match. They're going to be out living their life and they're going to let you live yours, and then you can meet in the middle. So that's a great question, but I tend to work more with professional and executive level men, which is interesting to me. This has only come to be in the last few years. I work with a few women, and I'm only speaking for myself, but men definitely get right to the point. As you men probably know, women, we go down the rabbit hole, we go through the emotional innuendos, we go through a lot of assumptions and judging. And I'm not saying men don't judge and assume, but I just find that dynamic interesting. The expectations that, when you mentioned a theme, quite a few of my clients mention feeling overwhelmed. Every one of these men is working very hard like you. Very different lives, but no less traveling and wanting to be the best husband, the best father, the best grandfather, the best coworker they can, the best boss. That's a lot of hats. And women are coming into that. But, we all know during the pandemic, a lot of women felt overwhelmed because they really are tend to be the primary child care person, home care person. But I would say it's individual to each person. And then as coaches, but that theme has been, how do I cope better in relationships? And what I'm coming to learn for myself and for my clients, it's this aha moment, right? Breakthrough moment, is give ourselves more grace. Tell others to give themselves more grace. Quit trying to do it all. It will all happen in its own time. It's easier said than done because, of the people we are. I do work with some ADHD people. I'm ADHD myself. I'm not diagnosed, but I'm sure of it, And with social media, most of us are probably undiagnosed. Go, go, go. As you said earlier, and I would love a whole nother episode with this topic, is what can our brains handle? We are reaching I think they can't handle all that's being sent to us, by all the different mediums. It's overwhelming. So setting boundaries is huge.
So through your travels of doing this in the 15 years, have you watched people you coach transform? And what type of transformations have you seen?
That's a great question. And each is significant for that person. One thing I'll say before I answer is it's fascinating to me that they'll arrive with a real goal in mind, and then we'll end up somewhere else a few months later. And that's our lives, to your point, and that's okay, because I think we're all processing where we want to go. And at some point, one of those goals is going to take precedence. But I'll give you a couple examples. Most of my clients I've worked with for at least 2 years. I've gotten a couple new ones this year, and it's always exciting. And a couple of them are women, by the way. I'm glad you asked that question, because this one, she's dynamic, a professional, independent business owner, raising her kids, single woman. So some really great new clients. But your question about, sorry, John, say it again.
What type of transformations have you seen?
There goes the ADHD.
Well, you know what? I got a PhD in that. Okay. A PhD in that.
Oh, yeah. What were the success stories, transitions?
Well, success stories are one thing, but we touched upon neuroplasticity to a point. Even though you're not doing therapy and you're not a therapist, okay? You are helping to correct and mend broken fences mentally
Yep.
for blocks for people to achieve what they're looking for.
Right.
Okay, whether that's showing up on time for a corporate meeting, showing up, and having everything prepared for a sales presentation,
Right.
not feeling overwhelmed. Um, that the problem is when the mind takes on too much,
Got it. Yep.
then there's a sense of being overwhelmed, and the mind will shut down, and it will do so much. It just won't. We'll think a big game, okay?
Yeah. Great intentions.
Yeah, exactly. Great expectations. And then what happens in the long run is you get all these things on your plate, and then all of a sudden the peas are sliding off the plate,
Yeah.
and this is going this way. But for what you're doing is coaching them into past the hurdles of keeping everything together and help the focus.
Right.
So that is, in a way, opening up new connections in the mind.
Yes.
And new ways of thinking and getting past blocks mentally where people have blocks.
Definitely.
And it would be amazing if you had, I do believe an MRI where you probably catch this, or probably a CAT scan of what happens when people are in a mode where they're procrastinating versus where they hit that procrastination point. Then they talk themselves out of it and like, well, you know what? Maybe I can get part of it done today, and I can delegate some out to some of my staff.
And I think that was your question initially, is how, thank you. Thank you, what kinds of transformations? Number one, it's very gradual. And that was thank you. That was a great way of expressing how people get through those things. And it requires, number one, and you and I know, I guess we both struggle with ADHD. And I learned so much from clients because there is so much out there for information. Not every hack works for every person. But one thing that works for everyone is stop, breathe, pull off the road, whatever you have to do to give yourself those little micro minutes every day to reset your mind.
Okay, so we delved into talking about clients and procrastination and what things they come to you for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you've talked about different transformations that have happened with clients over periods of time. Do you feel that, in essence, that positive motivation and actually some aspects of neuroplasticity are coming into play at the same time?
Boy, yes. Understanding that I'm not a doctor or physician, but I do lots of reading and talking to clients. And if we're talking as two people, yes, that's fascinating that the two would come together. I'm curious to know what makes you think that.
Well, because the mind keeps learning in my opinion, if the mind is motivated, it keeps learning to the day it stops.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the growth mindset theory.
Yeah.
Yep.
It keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with you, what you're doing is they've come up against roadblocks and blocks, and the achievement they're looking for or the goal they're looking for is not happening. And in essence, there's a part of the brain that's it's damaged, where the thought process to conclude the action is not happening. By your coaching, it's rerouting the thought process around that piece. In other words, if you had a circuit board that's damaged,
mm-hmm.
You had backup relay systems like the mind has.
Right.
It just goes around it and through your positive motivation, coaching,
That's right.
It's going around it.
That's right. And may I say, for your listeners and viewers, I've gotten to know you well enough that you are a science man. Just before we came on air, you were talking about my task to listen to a Star Trek episode and learn something. So I love the way you explain that from a science perspective. And with coaching, it's as simple as I love how it's a metaphor, if you will, what you just described, but I'm sure it's scientifically backed. Where, yes, coaches try and assume that there's a roadblock, something's making us stuck. And through conversation and the right questions and getting the person to really talk, they have to be willing, and you're always willing. And most of my clients, you're paying for the service, so you really want to make progress. And so by asking the right questions, I do believe it can help clients unblock and have those, breakthroughs, really. That's the word, breakthrough coaching. Oprah always calls them the aha moments, and I think that's kind of what they are. But I love the way that you described it. I can picture, my brain's neural paths working, and science has definitely proven that a growth mindset, there's been far too many examples and enough time has gone by that we are learning more and more as adults. It does not stop at a finite age, our brain's ability to learn and grow. But the science perspective is really fun to think about. I'd like to examine that myself.
Well, I had, I think of what documentary it was, but if a person delves into a topic for 5,000 hours, okay, and hopefully I'm not incorrect in what I just said, 5,000 hours, it makes that individual a genius in that matter.
I know what you're thinking of. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called, is it The Tipping Point? And I think it's 10,000. I think you're right. It's either 5 or 10,000 hours. And people like Bill Gates, maybe Elon Musk, anyone who just completely devotes their entire brain power to a specific astronauts, we could say, physicians, brain surgeons. Is that what you're referring to? That the amount
Correct.
of time you put into a specific study, you're exactly right. That Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book about that. That's the only one I know, but it's true.
Oftentimes I'll ask people like, how long have you been a carpenter? How long have you done this? How long have you done that? And if they say 5 or 10 years, well, it starts to tip into expert craftsmanship, expert in what they're doing. When you start to go with 15 to 20 years, there are at a point they've mastered it where they can actually make improvements upon what they've been taught.
Yes.
So, I mean, I've actually invented different methods of remediations, restoration type procedures that
you're an inventor. Yeah.
In a way, in some ways, yes. At the same point in time, those pathways in my mind, those aha moments would have never happened if I hadn't taken the gradual step up the ladder and filled my mind with, this is the problem, and then all of a sudden there was an aha moment and here's a solution.
Yes. Having faith in yourself, curiosity. I've been hearing a lot about a sense of curiosity equals a very fulfilling life, because we're not growth mindset again. We're not having that fixed mindset that says, oh, why bother to be curious? I'm not going to learn anything new anyway. I mean, we'd all curl up and die, I think, if that were the case. But yes, you had faith from your past experiences that you could find the right answer. The client I mentioned earlier, who can be up for 16 hours at a time, my mind would be fixed at a certain point and I would go to bed. But they knew they were on to something. So they stayed awake and they moved on. And I see a lot of that in you, by the way, John, where you would keep going and be driven. And then that is how those people find those answers, like the Bill Gates, the physicians. I used to work with Fred Hutch, the people who discover different types of pathways towards the cure for cancer. They keep going and going and getting closer.
Oh. Well, one of the things that in man's quest for knowledge, and do you find in your clients they have a quest for achievements, achieving knowledge, and then they get to a certain point, they're overwhelmed, and there's roadblocks from at that point where they're just, their brains are on overload?
Yes.
So how do you get past that?
That is a great question. And at least with the business that I run, so Upways Coaching, we have literally three different programs. So if you show up to your first visit, the breakthrough program, we've got check-ins, people who just literally want to be held accountable. They're on their path, they're doing okay. We talk every week for 20 minutes and that's it. I'm just a live person that's saying, how's it going? Is there anything you could do a little bit better this week? Breakthrough coaching is what you just alluded to, John. It's, I've hit a roadblock. And I love working with people like you because you are, I think you said earlier, plates in the air. Your peas slide off the plate. And so in those relationships, it's not unlike our real world, families and friends, but they don't all want to talk about that. They might, I'm not going to coach my family. So the people who show up and want to do the work like you, and I have my own coach as well. So I love the idea that those breakthroughs are going to happen again and again because of the person you are. And to answer your question, what do you do when you become overwhelmed? Once again, you stop, you kind of say, what can we do today? Where are you at today? How should we use our time today? Are you feeling more emotional heavy? Are you feeling more like you could solve a couple problems? The client always leads the way. So if there's a day where you've had a lot going on, we take the first 10 minutes and do a brain dump. Tell me everything that's been happening. And it feels great. Again, our friends and family, they don't want to hear that.
Okay.
So it's wonderful to have that. Therapists are great at that, but they're going to delve in and analyze. And that is incredibly helpful too. I really believe from my own experience with coaching, you can meet a person in the moment and address the things that are of that day or of that week. It doesn't have to be your whole life history. And that feels pretty good. So for the client and for me. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, we usually stop and say, let's break this down. Well, what are the top 5 things you're feeling overwhelmed about? And then we pick one. So depending on whether it's breakthrough coaching, which is for an hour, or check-ins, then I'll say, let's do a breakthrough session. So I really love to meet people right where they are. There's no need to waste an hour of their time if they just need a check-in. But if they are interested in doing more regular, consistent work and growth, we can do an hour a week. And I don't ever do more than that, by the way, because you need time and clients need time to actually do the work,
Okay. So do you find that with the family and relationships and marriages, that's one of the themes that comes up in your coaching that seems to be interfering with business goals or professional goals?
100%. 100%. For
Okay.
all of us, men, women, retirees, divorcees, young people, 100%. Expectations in this day and age. And again, social media speeds everything up. So they text you, they might expect you to text them back right away. You're in the middle of doing a podcast interview. I probably have a phone call from my mom. So boundaries, managing our time. Sorry, Mom, if she watches this. I love my mom. I'm sure she didn't call.
Okay.
But no, that's a great point. So yes, relationships are at the heart of most of our overwhelm. I like the idea that if you could take people out of every equation, things would run smoothly. But we need people. We need people in our lives.
I have to, different businesses I've had throughout the years, and I've had some business concepts and business models that were okay. They flew all right. Then I had some that were, better than the one before. And I had some that I knocked it out of the park. I mean, I was making like tons of money.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you've seen all of this in your career?
Well, the one thing that I've seen throughout the different time periods, one time period was in my late 20s. I was with an individual, and I was, thought that if I, slowed down, took in a business partner, it would make a change. It didn't. And that's been one of the common themes, because this has come up in our conversations.
Yep. So you've tried to adjust. You thought if you adjusted your career life, it would make your family life better.
Which it didn't.
And vice versa for all of us. That's the big riddle, I guess, is communicating with people. Yeah, it's complicated, John. So you're not alone.
I think that for people that are driven, people that are entrepreneurs, one of the things they get so mono-focused on where they want to go, they're not looking at the collateral damage on the left and or the right. Mm-hmm, it's like a bull racing through a china shop, to get to the other side.
Right.
There's a lot of damage on the way there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that come up in coaching, like where there's, it's stressing my marriage, it's stressing my relationship, or I just don't have time to date, or I don't meet anybody because I'm not available. Those some of the roadblocks
Yes.
that
And
you encounter?
you've given me two things to think about here, two answers, which number one, relationships are at the heart of all of this. And most people don't know that. Most of us, our brains are so driven on what we're doing. And then at the end of the day, it's, oh, wow, how's my family? And it's so funny. We do all of this. I think most of us for our loved ones. My dad, my grandfather used to say we were gone all the time because we were raising money. We wanted our family to be happy. And you had to have an income and support your family. However, the rest of your family had expectations. And this has been going on for millennia, is that happy, how do you find that happy medium? Well, now you've got women in the workforce, so they're starting to realize what it's like to be in the workforce. So yes, every one of my clients, I do believe, I'm thinking of each of them right now as much as I can. They all have something they really desire, and almost to a person, it has to do with relationships. One had a very serious conversation with his parents this holiday. Very difficult. That was at the core of our work for that week. You and I have had conversations about relationships. I share with every client my situation, to a degree. When I say situation, any given week, Joel and I are getting along. Joel's building his own house, So, and I share as much as I can about my own experience. So yes, I would say relationships are at the core of it. And most of us don't understand that, including the men or women who are at home raising the kids. They're at home in their reality, or our parents, our aging parents. They've got their reality. Oh, my kids aren't thinking about me, but we really are, So it's complicated. I would say the core of the work is about relationships at the end of the day, even if I call myself a business coach, a breakthrough coach. It's just, how can we take care of ourselves so we can have a joyful life and let others know we care? If you're raising kids, they have to equate into that, obviously.
Have you integrated any of what you just said to me about the collateral damage that happens with the driven syndrome to clients about, like, maybe reaching out, they're at the office or whatever, it's 9:00 at night, at least, texting some roses or some, thoughts to a loved one?
No, well, that's a great idea. Coaching is a fine balance because we're not consultants, but that is a great idea. I love that. In fact, letting them know in some way or another, I'm thinking of you. I'm a big believer in just cards, handwritten cards. My mom has so many cards for me. My significant other, Joel, has, little notes. That is a great idea. Any way that we can be, especially in this day and age. How many emojis did you get on Christmas Day? I want to turn my phone off, because it doesn't mean I'm not appreciative, but yeah, it's too much. So I love the idea of a random roses. I mean, that's different. If you're going to be doing that randomly, or it's midnight, hey, I'm thinking of you and I'm working late. Best of all is to have that conversation from the get-go. Let's say you're dating someone new, hey, this is how I live my life. How does that resonate with you? Those are important questions, every bit as important as when, for younger people, I'd like to have kids. How about you? Or, I live on a fixed income. How about you? Those are very important questions to have, but I love that. How are we going to communicate together? Let's say you're going to go on a new date next week. Let's say Joel and I do it in therapy just yesterday. The therapist said, what's a different way you could talk to Joel about that? I've known him since 1992. I can still find a new way to talk to him about things. So I love that. Again, the growth mindset. We're still learning. It's just a wonderful thing,
So out of the 15 years you've been doing this, okay, the clients you have, how many divorces or breakups of relationships have you seen from clients, because they're so driven and it's the bull running through the china shop and the collateral damage, how much of a toll have you seen it take on entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives? I mean, surgeons are another example, doctors, long hours.
Yep.
Okay, nurses, RNs. I mean,
Right.
you know.
Again, just keeping in mind I'm coaching, but my own experience, and I do have a circle of, a coach, what do they call it? The mastermind groups for coaches. So I do have colleagues that I share things with, and they share with me. Again, John, relationships, it is the single most complicated part of being a human being, I believe, is some of the closest people in my life. I've had ins and outs with them where we didn't talk for a couple of years and we're back talking again. And then some of them go away forever or on pause, as we like to say. I mean, I have my own life coach and she'll say it never has to be forever. You can leave a door open. But how much do they impact our lives? How much do they impact our careers? Greatly, because you and I know, and science has proven, our heads and our hearts are connected. Our heads and our hearts and our souls. I mean, it is all scientifically connected. So back to your neuroplasticity, the idea that a breakup really hurts. And if we don't face that, if we keep pushing it under the rug, it's going to come up at some point. It's going to rear its ugly head at some point. And it's better if we take that time, pause. If we're so fortunate to do that, I know a lot of people work very, very hard, but allow yourself that time, like on Thursday from noon to 5, I'm gonna take that time just for me and really think about this. What do they say? There's no way around but through. You really have to get through it. And therapy says that. A lot of people refuse to go to therapists, but I do have people come to me who will say, I wasn't going to see a therapist, but I'll talk to you about it. And I'll say, well, I'm not a therapist, but you can talk to me and we can set goals. We can have productivity. We can move ahead. But because that's a great question you asked, John, because I have worked with so many people and come to learn for myself and my clients and read about it, heard about it. There's lots of podcasts out there about it, is that relationships are at the core of everything we do. Everything. Doctors who work long hours, have they communicated with the person they married? What are your expectations? If we're going to be married, this is my life right now. How do you plan to spend that time? I was actually just thinking, we watched the Seahawks game the other day, and that coach is so young. Mike McDonald. And his wife, he calls her a rock star. But a person like that, whose whole life is devoted to football, they seem like a very good pairing. What is she doing with her time? Hopefully she has a very productive life. We cannot put all our eggs in someone else's basket anymore. We can't. And that is probably why we have so many divorces, because we're all wanting to find our own way now. Women have the freedom, the job opportunities, and the income to find their own way. But we still need each other. Men, women, men, whoever you are. We still need, I think, companionship in some way.
Earlier, you talked about talking to clients that are working mega hours. Did you get enough sleep? Have you been drinking enough water? But if you look at what happens to the human mind if a person's put in solitary confinement, okay, so then they have no social interaction. And we touched upon this, the pretty waitress syndrome.
Yes.
Yes, the social interaction. It was screwing up my intermittent fasting because I would, go.
That's a great analogy.
Hit my little spot.
Yep.
Right.
You knew you needed our brain. I mean, we know we want companionship. We're doing all these other things that are good for us, but we're going to do what we need to do.
One of the things I was going to say was sleep, food, water, but connection. And that, I think that is one of the biggest things for me. It was a sticking point. And one of the main things that brought up transformation was because we had a transformation because I admitted something to myself, right? I still had feelings for a woman I was seeing earlier this year.
Yep.
And I came to grips with it. and whether or not it goes.
Do you remember how you came to grips with it? I think that's really, if you're willing to share, I think it's helpful.
I think that what happened with that was it will always be there for me, no matter what.
Yes.
And I wrote this lady I would say a lengthy letter, lengthy enough.
Yep.
And
which is amazing. Communication, sharing your heart.
Yeah.
Closure, not closure, door open.
But it was bottled up inside me, but it was affecting my professional life.
Yes.
And we had talked about that in length. My breakthrough, my going around an injury, rewiring, going around it, was admitting it was there in the first place.
Oh yeah, it was like aha, right? Wow, there it is.
You described it as a release.
Okay.
Word for word.
Okay.
So with your clients and
you were kind of set free. Is that what I meant by the word release? Like it was a release of your.
It really was, because at that point in time, it was a release, because I finally admitted to myself I wasn't running from it anymore, or pretending it wasn't there, or playing the tough guy syndrome.
Yeah.
And turn and burn kind of scenario.
And you probably hadn't given it any real thought, because you ran into her very unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the letter, wow, how many therapists tell you to journal, get a book out. I have another client like me, has ADHD, and he said, oh, I don't like to journal. I said, well, then call it a brain dump, just whatever. And guess what? It's working. He'll go in when he feels like it. There's no rules. People don't necessarily like rules. So when you started writing it out for her, you started to discover your feelings. And there is a lot of power in that. When I've had a couple of really bad moments during the course of my relationship with Joel, and I feel I have no one to turn to, and I go into what, I would call a little emotional tantrum by myself, I'll get my phone out and I'll hit record. And it feels so good to just put it out there. I may never listen to it again. So I'm glad you did that. That was very cool.
Do you use any of those kind of tools with your clients?
I do.
So was that something that you guided me towards?
You know this. You'll have the solution. Because Joni, my coach and therapist, says this to me. She'll say, well, that was your idea. So we do a lot of listening, a lot of questions and I've read a book that's a really good book recently about how to ask the right questions that get you thinking for yourself and solving your own problem or situation. And it's amazing. My coach does it with me. And so I might have led you to the water, but like you did the work, because you said to me, remember you came to that session. I wrote her a letter. I'm like, oh, wow. So you kind of came to that on your own. Yeah. I encouraged you. I don't remember saying that it was a release for you, but I do remember you said, I feel a sense of, I think you said, John, I feel a sense of freedom. Like, did you say like the door still feels open, but the timing isn't right? Like you stepped away from it. Okay, tell me what it is.
I think that for me, it was unexpected. I didn't really feel, and because I've got so much going on right now. I've got the working on movie scripts. That's starting, to get muddled through that. And the new business launches we're doing and rebranding.
And the brain can only handle so much. Like you said, I so relate to that. I think a lot of people
dump that aspect of there's no significant other, right? And when the day is done, there's no one to talk to.
Right.
So where do you find yourself? Talking to a pretty waitress.
Gotcha. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then how did you, I'm going to ask you, because from a coaching perspective, you quit doing that and you redirected to your other slices of your pie, because you and I talked the next week and I said, how are you sleeping? You said, excellent. That's a great indicator with any human being. If they're sleeping well, things are going pretty well. And I said, did you go out this week? Because your action item was, and you said it, the client always sets it. I couldn't possibly know what you want to set. You said, I'm going to try not to go out and just connect with people, because then it leads to me eating a meal, having a drink, and I'm trying to get in shape for my business, for my career. And you did it. So when you and I showed up on that Sunday, and then I was fascinated to know, how did you do that? how did you put that on pause? And you, I think you had other connections, friends, people you did things with, but you were busy with work.
A mutual friend invited me up, and it was like a comet at connecting, and the individual I'm talking about was there, and finally it all kind of hit. This was what was gnawing at me the whole time.
And isn't it amazing, by the way, my Christmas did not turn out the way I had an idea in my head. It was completely different than that idea, and it was perfect. And what a breakthrough for me. Wow. Some things, I could have said they went south, but in fact, the things that appeared in their place, like this woman who showed up that you didn't expect, look at the ripple effect of life. And my mom said when I left today, didn't this turn out to be kind of magical? I'm like, it did. And had I gone strictly by the path, it probably would have been fine as well. But look at the ripple effect of you running into that person. You did the hard work of staying focused on work, staying focused on your workouts, taking good care of John. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, something happens that gives you this next avenue. So maybe my point is that life can bring us surprises if we're willing to be patient. And that doesn't mean a year. That means like a week, just step back. Maybe life isn't going to be perfect. From a divorced woman who is still working it out with her partner. You probably can imagine how many people have said, oh, why aren't you just trying to meet somebody else? And we both have our reasons. There is love there. Same as your situation, which we won't go into detail on, but, there's emotion somewhere in there. And so you're following your gut.
True.
I hope. So
there was a beautiful thing that came up in church. You have to give love to get love. Mm-hmm. So this Christmas didn't go as I planned. And I kind of kicked back and I had to think to myself, I received plenty of love, but at the same point in time, I didn't feel like there was enough reciprocation on other people because I'm a very giving person.
Me too. I agree. I feel you on that.
Yeah.
And how do you sort that out?
I just decided that I wasn't going to dwell on it. For starters, another thing too, a lot of priceless things happen in Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Good. I feel that way too. When we learn, maybe we as givers, if we are doing the work, maybe we can say, well, where are the blessings?
I think as an entrepreneur, I finally have learned to flick off business in my off hours. One of the things I said to Toby, Matt, about 2 weeks ago, normally I would work till 11 o'clock at night, 10:30, 11 o'clock.
What drove you, before I forget? I really want to know, because most of my clients are just like you. What drove you to keep working? Was it just that you were loving what you were doing? You know what flow state is. You were so in that flow state.
One of the things that I was looking to do was I had this fixation about taking my restoration company national. Mm-hmm. And whether or not it goes semi-national or national, who knows? At the same point in time, money, it's kind of like an addiction. The more it got, the higher it went, the more the goals. And one of the famous words of one of my exes, like, you'll never achieve enough to satisfy you. And I think,
which doesn't have to be true, by the way. People say a lot of things that aren't true, and I know we take that in because I sure do.
I think I have a conquering spirit, and a lot of times for me, it's about the achievement, the goal.
But you're different now, aren't you? You don't stay at work till 11 o'clock.
No.
See?
Yeah.
So I would say as a coach,
I flick it off, turn it off.
I would say as a coach, relationships are going to hold a lot more potential for you going forward. You're finding your way. You're learning what you don't want, what you do want, and by just simply being self-aware, our lives will be better. We're going to be surrounded by Eeyores. I have several in my life, and don't you get tired of people saying, oh, you're so positive all the time, or you're so hopeful, or they really want to bring you down with them? And now I'm getting very good at realizing I'm 59. if I'm lucky, I'll live to 90. Do you feel that way, John? Like you're going to be definitely more wide open
what
with
I do
that next
now
partner?
with people who are negative, or let me delve into this for a little bit. I don't want to sound like I take him to the guillotine, okay, but I just cut them out of my life. You can't have in order to make an omelet, yeah, you're gonna have to break a few eggs. But if you have somebody there saying constantly, this will never work, or they're jealous of you.
And it is a fixed mindset in many ways.
Yeah.
Where they don't have that sense of course it will. Yeah.
Like, say, for example, like, yeah, I'd like to build on one of my properties and I want to have a view of the lake. And this is the house I want to build. Oh, that'll never happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? If you think that in your brain, it will never happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen.
And you've now learned what you don't want. And so many people go their whole lives I'm sorry, I sound like a walking repetitive cliche here, but the fixed mindset, I don't know that a growth mindset. They claim we can be both throughout our lives. We will go through phases where nothing works because we're feeling low. Then we come back up again but I will say, if you're with a permanent fixed mindset person and you're a growth mindset person, it's going to take a lot of work to bring them to where you'd be happy.
A very beautiful movie, and I'm going to do a quote out of it. Life is like a box of chalk. You're never going to know what you're going to get, right? Okay. And that movie is very impactful. I love that movie. So
many great messages in Forrest Gump.
Yeah, and we're going to get a letter in the mail after that one. But I honestly, for me, my thing is life is like a roller coaster. I mean, there's thrilling moments, there's terrifying moments, there's fun moments, and then all of a sudden
the thrill of the ride, right?
Well, one of the things I have a quote is, life is like a journey. I mean, you better live, laugh, love, and travel before you hit the end of the road. Right? Because once you hit the end of the road, it's done.
High five to that, brother.
So if you don't live life, right, and you don't strive, and you don't seek things, you're not going to find it sitting in front of your television. You're not going to find it pinned down and being
managed by someone else or
stagnant. One of the things too, I guess, a person like myself, problems with relationships I've had before, being what I do, being like this. I'm not a 9-to-5 guy, and I never will be, and I can't be that. I just
and
can't
isn't
do
it interesting that they say opposites attract, and yet I don't know if you want to learn opposites can attract, but I think there has to be some definite commonalities with that relationship too. Do you?
True. There has to be.
Or acceptance, a lot of acceptance.
One of the things that I was so thrilled about having you on the show today was to talk about and I had delved into a lot of topics with entrepreneurs about they take on too much, or CEOs or a lot of executive folks will take on too much and the brain shuts down. And then all of a sudden there's things start to slide off to the left and slide off to the right.
They lose their control.
Well,
or the
focus becomes so distorted that they were laser focused, and they were slicing and dicing. And now the slicer dicer is dull. It's not working as well.
Yep.
But I think one of the main components I think we touched on today is, sleep. For if a person gets a workaholic mode or a driven mode, or whatever way you want to word this, food, but
proper nutrition, drinking lots of water, surrounding yourself by good people. And I love what you just said, by the way. Social interaction. I also like what you said. I felt the slightest bit triggered for me when you said cutting people out, because that's been a real issue in my life. When I get, and maybe it's that I'm a woman, I don't know, but there is a part I admire about that mindset of they're not good, bye-bye. Women tend to, if I leave the door open, the nurturing. I definitely wish I had more of that. Nope, they're not good, bye-bye. But I do believe in people's ability. It's probably a little bit of the coaching in me that I do believe in people's ability to change and grow. And my therapist says, leave the door open, because look where you are now. People from your past, you see this at reunions, right person, wrong time. Then you go back to the reunion, you're like, oh, they're divorced. Their kids are grown. I always like their personality, could be the right person, right time. So you never know.
Now, isn't that funny you brought that up? One of the things in the driven, type of mind frame, there's other things. I've never been competitive with anybody. One thing I always look at somebody and like, oh, like they got a house on the top of a hill with a view. Like, they're rich. They should be taxed to death for that.
You're not jealous.
No.
That's great.
What I do is I like to analyze. What do they do for a living? How do they achieve that?
Yeah.
And
it's interesting.
I'd rather, I go with the approach of that's, how did they do, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How was this pulled off? There's a lot of, there's a negative and a positive mindset. I heard it a while ago to describe like Republicans and Democrats, where an expensive car drives by and a Democrat goes, yeah, look at that. Like, that
he's not driving a earth-friendly car.
Yeah,
or
that filthy, rotten, rich dude should be taxed to death kind of like scenario. And the Republican minds, this was from a show I watched years ago. Well, how that guy, what does he do for a living? How's he driving that car?
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think if you look at it politically, that's one aspect of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the other aspect of it, it's about positive, negative mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, take out politics, religion,
and you
whatever.
Talked about eliminating negative people,
mm-hmm.
and we talked about eliminating negative people, but there has to be boundaries when you're an entrepreneur or an executive, right? You come, okay. One of the things I heard recently that hit home with me the most, and I am an extreme fan of Dr. David Sinclair from Harvard Medical Research,
mm-hmm.
extreme fan. And he was talking about this technique they've come up with, and they've cured blindness in mice. This was a couple of years ago, or a few years back, when they made this breakthrough. And he was in his house, if I remember the story correctly, and he was telling his wife this was a big thing for him, right? This was a huge achievement. And she said something like, that's nice. She goes, can you empty the dishwasher and walk down the room?
Oh, my goodness. Dr. David Sinclair. I'm going to write that down.
Yep.
And so she just wasn't in the moment, in the headspace with him at all.
I think that we talked about jealousy, negativity.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And as Sinclair is an extremely driven individual, I have nothing but pure respect for the man. Okay. I anti-age. I mean, I delve into everything he does. And I delve into the science of how it works.
And you're such a curious person, again, that you want to do this yourself and have the results to show. Yep.
Well, I mean, I'd rather be the guy at 93, that died in a skiing accident rather than being spoon-fed applesauce and fell out of his chair.
Me too. How did he do that? I want to know how he did that. Yeah.
I'd rather be the dude that did the splits and bonked his head.
Yeah, I often say I'd like to live a long time as long as I feel good.
I'd rather go that route.
Yep.
But with a lot of the things you've touched upon, and I know you have to be for their clients or confidentiality, but I don't think it matters much if it's executive or entrepreneur. People who are driven, it's the people that are around them that can act like a cancer and acid, and kind of toxic, and poison the waters and be like, take the wind out of the sails. So through your accountability, for your accountability coaching, what you're doing is you're offering positive motivation mindset transitions.
Right. I like that you said that earlier when we took a break, positive mindset reinforcement. I like that a lot.
But also transitions as well.
Yes.
Reinforcement, you've done it with me. And it was, probably one of the environments I grew up in as a child. There wasn't very much like, hey, you did a great job.
Really?
Was more like, it's not perfect. It was that kind of thing.
Wow. Yeah, that can shape you for sure.
But at the same point in time, when you're an achiever, people like get jealous of you. But when you fall flat on your face, there's a crowd around you to throw rocks like you wouldn't believe.
You feel that way from the successes in your life. And I think this happens to men as well as women.
I absolutely feel that way. I have a daughter of mine who has a family member. It's her biological mother. And I have not had contact with these individuals for decades. I could say a few things that would probably not be appropriate for the podcast.
How you would define or describe that relationship.
But one of the things that struck me, they asked her how her loser father is doing nowadays. Really what I'm getting at is, if you had never coached any of these people in 15 years, how would it have affected the industries? Because you are coaching people who are movers and shakers and leaders, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you've had a huge impact.
I hope so. That's my hope.
Okay.
And I love learning, and I feel challenged to show up ready, because it can be intimidating. I can be intimidated by all this intelligence.
So one thing I found fascinating, and we're going to go for a little bit more, because you opened up about something that I had no idea. You get coaching.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's put some clarity to that for me.
Okay. My coach, thank you. She deserves a lot of credit. Not only has she been my personal business coach, my personal coach, my relationship coach. Joel and I went through breakup, divorce, and we now just yesterday had a session with her. She's remarkable. And it's why she has a coaching certification and a master's in social work. So once again, the growth mindset. Why not? Why can't we do this and that and this? And then how do they fit in? So the journey, John, is that I work with her, and I ask her, I want to be coached today. Please put your coaching hat on. We're going to talk business, or we discuss personal life situations, because she has her therapy hat. So I feel like I have the best of both worlds with her. And I'll tell you, I'm a big believer. Anything you do, always be learning. And actually, she taught me that. She herself has a therapist. So I really believe that whatever we're doing, we better always be learning if we're going to be worth our salt in that profession. So always be learning. I meet with her a couple times a month. I share a lot of her isms, Joni isms, and I've just learned so much. Like I said at the very beginning of our interview today, I really believe it takes a village for all of us. And I'll often designate a person the mayor of my village, because they've really been the key player that month or that year. And so I really appreciate you. Thank you for recognizing that. I mean, it's so great to have this interview where, you and I work together in that capacity, and it's nice to hear that from someone. So the impact I've made, and then it is a ripple effect. You also manage, well, I don't manage a lot of people, you do. And so I just think there's a lot to be learned. And one of the things that I heard you say today that I'm going to take away with me is, in certain moments, there's nothing wrong with having that black and white decision, whether it's relationships, coworkers, employees. When you are in that position where you have that great financial responsibility of running companies, it's probably not a bad idea to say, this isn't going to work. And that's an area that I would like to grow in, because in coaching, you often feel like you're holding their heart in your hands. And it can be a little bit harder to say, hey, you need to get over that. It can take a little more time and a little more nuance to work through those things. But I would like to become a little more direct, like you've expressed today.
Positive motivation.
Positive motivation. Being diplomatic about it.
Yeah.
Yep. And meeting them where they're at. That is easier said than done. Meeting a person. Are you having a bad day? Do you want to talk about that? As a coach, but not your therapist. And there have been a few people that were in crisis where I can give them a resource or two to call. I can listen in that day, but they can call that other resource. Thankfully, not you, but some clients have had real crisis. So,
Do you think that in the corporate structure, in today's corporate structure, that having an accountability coach built into a human resource department might benefit large corporations rather than have an employee like start to break down and fall apart at the seams? It'd be accountability coaches to help there and relieve some of this, take some of the steam before before it explodes.
Absolutely. In fact, 2 great examples. Great question. That was not a question I saw coming. Cancer support centers.
Okay.
They had me pitch them to coach patients and their families in Montana. They're not ready. It's a not just yet, but they have acupuncturists whom they work with. So some of the medical areas of our society are starting to recognize coaches as a potential vital part of that healing process. They call them survivors now, not cancer patients, but cancer survivors, which I love. And I appreciate that. And then that's a great question, John. So there was that where I'm working in dialogue with my local cancer support communities on where could a coach fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And the other instance that is happening now is some corporations do have professional coaches working Google, there was a really good podcast recently, The Hidden Brain interviewed a corporate coach for Google. And I don't know what capacity she's in because, again, that word coach kind of is out there all over the place. But she talked a lot about boundary setting, schedules, how people at a busy place like Google can balance their schedules a little bit better with family. And to your point earlier, know when it's time and be given that time from a corporation to work with their family before you have a breakdown, work with a marriage before you get divorced, work with your personal health, mental or physical, before it's too late. So thank God there are corporations that are embracing some coaching and therapy. And not everybody wants to go to a therapist, as I mentioned earlier. So coaching can feel sort of like a baby step in some ways.
My view, because I'm a CEO of companies, I think accountability coaching would actually add productivity to the work environment. It would smooth out issues before issues blossom into internal wars within companies.
Definitely.
I don't know how many times I can't stand working with Susan.
Yep. Like a mediator, so to speak.
I think that basically that way upper management could hear like, hey, you've got this going on here, and this would probably be a better fit to move Susan somewhere else. That kind of thing, or maybe we got a problem. Maybe we need to change Susan needs to leave.
Right. Before you're getting lawyers and HR involved and all of that, it could be
I would
kind of a
view this
segue.
almost being built into an HR department. Because everybody goes
Interesting.
running. What's funny is I watched this video, and I swear it was one of the funniest videos I've ever seen. This gal comes in interview with the elderly, probably got my age. I don't know why I say elderly. And she's like, well, the job starts at 8:00 in the morning. And she goes, well, and she went this long thing about how she doesn't get to bed till about 2:45 in the morning. And by the time she gets her, her latte.
These are my rules.
A latte and all her other goobly gook, 11 a.m. was just fine for her to start. And he goes, I don't think this is going to be a good fit for us. She's not even hired yet. And she goes, well, I feel a hostility. I need to talk to HR. I don't have any direction.
Funny. That's funny. I've seen that. You shared that with me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he goes, you haven't been hired yet. And one of the things you touched upon is dancing into this new lawsuit environment. I feel that I have been subjected to prejudice because of my preferences or blah blah blah. And I think that having accountability coaching, in a lot of ways, or having some type of counseling built into large corporations
can mitigate some of that possibly.
Well, that too. And if you have an employee who's having traumatic experience at home, maybe the wife had a miscarriage and they're going through massive problems.
Yeah, relationships again.
I'm a firm believer in the employees that are valuable people, they're so valuable to the company, and they're going through problems, rescue them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't like
Mm-hmm.
throw in the towel. Oh, we're just going to cut the
Give them the
lines.
tools to continue and
Maybe there's a
succeed, or
little bit more understanding, like, hey, what's going on with you, and can we talk about what's going on?
dialogue.
I've taken a few of my employees out to lunch. One is a gentleman; he's a veteran that works for me, and I had no idea what was going on with him. And then afterwards, I had a better understanding.
I see what you're saying now. So a role that could be somewhere between HR. It's so black and white even today with corporations.
HR,
You're in or you're out. Yeah.
Human resource folks, and I don't want to disrespect them, and I don't know a lot about the professional qualities of a human resource position, but I don't think they're motivational people. I think they're more like, okay, this is what we want done, and this is our policies. In other words, they're law enforcement of the company.
And I've had personal experience with a couple of large corporations as an employee in my own life, where they 100% were defending the top brass, legally. And if you were a peon in the company, you weren't being really represented. And I've experienced that.
I think that having accountability coaching in large corporations, or a team, if you had 800 employees, and you have a small team of accountability coaches or counseling built into the business, I think it'd up productivity, and also it'd make improve morale. If it was my thing, I think it would be a great thing.
Yep.
How would do you think that's on point?
Yes, absolutely. And large corporations, to your point, and organizations, it's the right time for this. It's you could not be more correct. Whether I were a coach or not, I'm seeing a lot more of it happening. Case in point was the cancer support centers. They do have coaches in different groups, and that's a very touchy environment, as you can imagine. You've got people struggling with cancer in relationships, families that have uprooted their lives and had to put things on hold. Very few situations probably match that in terms of stress. And they are looking at bringing coaches into the mix as that middle line between the medical professionals and the staff. So you raised a great example there. And I'm just actually thinking, right now I work with individuals, but it has crossed my mind to work with businesses as well. One step at a time. And most of the people I work with are executives and managers, such as yourself, owners, business owners, entrepreneurs. So you are impacting a lot of people as well. So yes, I see it now, not as much as I'd like to see more of it, but you are right on point that a coach is a great fit in a corporation, I think. Could be, if they're open to it.
What types of people would benefit from like motivational coaching?
Why would they want to hire one?
Why would they hire, or benefit from it?
I was telling you earlier, I love this question. Thanks for asking it, because the cynics of the world, the people who say, oh, I'll never go to a therapist. I'm not going to air my dirty laundry to anybody. It's going to stay right here. And you say, oh, that sounds painful. Coaches can be that little bit of a entry level, if you will, because we're not therapists. We're not going to delve in deep, but we are having those conversations and talking about family and relationships. So I would say not everybody needs to hire a coach. A person would want to be willing and ready, as you are, to show up. And I certainly have clients who aren't willing and ready. They show up and they just don't want to do the work. And then we have that conversation. Hey, you've hired me. I'm showing up. Is there a reason, that you're not wanting to do the work? Am I heading in the right direction? Or is there another type of coaching you'd prefer? No, this is good. And so there are those people who want to say they have a therapist or a coach, but they just don't want to do the work. I would say to get the most out of it, John, would be to do what you're doing, to show up, to be really open. A person who wants to hire a coach would want to be really open and candid in order to do the work, and be honest, And I try to say during sessions with clients, are we heading in the right direction today? Was there anywhere else you wanted to go? Nope, this is it. So not everybody needs a coach. The timing needs to be right. Honestly, every one of us could benefit from a therapist, a coach, a massage. When we use the word mental massage, I mean, there's things we can do for ourselves that you're doing right now. Take care of our body, get good sleep. Coaching is that person who's going to listen. I have my own coach, as you mentioned earlier. They're going to listen when most people really aren't interested. I mean, our family loves us, but are they going to meet us once a week and really kind of hash things out? Probably not like a therapist or a coach would. So you got to be, you really want to be willing and ready. In my case, with Upways, my company, we offer a few. This will be my one and only little pitch here, but we do offer a couple of intro check-ins. They cost nothing to just see if it's for you. So I do that with everybody. They find me at try.upways.co. They find our company at try.upways.co. And then they can sign up, and we do the first 2 to 3 sessions are free. So see if it's for you. And some people like going to the gym. You might go and work out for a month and go, I don't want to do this for a while. That's okay. But if you're going to do the work and you're ready to do the work, that's when it's for you, I would say.
Have you ever heard of Landmark Forum?
Yes.
And have you done it?
Once, years ago.
I did.
It's amazing.
I did the beginner and the advanced, and I agree, it's amazing. It helped me with conflict resolution.
Oh, that's great.
And also insights into my, where I sprang out of childhood and that kind of thing. And, why.
Are they still doing it? Is there still?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing. I haven't done it in years, but it was pretty profound.
Yeah, it was very profound for me. How does somebody become a motivational coach? I mean, is there a school, a training program, a boot camp? I mean,
I personally, I'll give you the short version. In my own situation, John, it felt like a boot camp. Again, just like when you hire a coach, I think the timing needs to be right. So I started the journey of looking around and finding the right group to learn from and become professionally certified. Back then, you could pay up to $10,000 and go off to San Diego, go to a hotel. They made a big deal out of it, become professionally certified. I personally, at that time, found one of the first, this was 15 years ago, Mitch Matthews' Coach Mindset. I found one of the first online programs. And it was incredible. I purchased, I think it was $4,000 to $5,000. And I purchased, it might not even been that much. I became professionally certified, but you got to keep all of the recordings. It was one of the first times they started doing that. So maybe that makes me old, but 15 years ago, it was one of the first digital platforms that you could keep and look back on later like a library. So I worked with him. I've repeated that course in different fashions over the last several years. I've met with him one-on-one a few times. He does individual and public speaking. So that was my boot camp, and I loved it. And one of the things Mitch Matthews' program did, I don't know if he's still doing it. He's definitely still training people to become coaches, and he's training coaches, is the idea that you meet people where they are. You're always learning. You always want to have that coach for yourself. And what was the other one? He collaborates. He believes in all of us talking to other coaches too. So, but I did not opt for the big event. I opted for the ongoing training. And there is an organization, International Coaching Federation. A lot of corporations will only hire you as a coach if you have that credential. I am doing just fine in my profession with my experience as a business person without that one very expensive credential, that membership. And I think they're a great organization. I just am not currently a member.
Thank you for coming on the show. It was a pleasure.
I would give you a hug, but there's that coach-client confidential thing. Or no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, I love you, John. Thank you for having me. Great questions. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, everyone else on your staff. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you next Sunday.
You've just watched American Enlightenment. Thank you for watching. My hope is to ignite minds and bring unity through thought.